In our last class, we created access database. And then once we set up the access database, which we called university, we're supposed to design an interface for the access database that we have designed. So we designed an access database, and then our job was to go further and design an interface for the access database that we have designed. So that was where we
Hello,
stopped.
sir.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Sir,
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Hello?
So it looks like his line has dropped.
What I was saying was that our last lesson, we designed a database and we designed an interface. And we're supposed to connect the interface and the database, but it didn't work out like how we expected it. My framework was not up to date, hence I couldn't continue with you guys. So today we are going to see if we can continue on that line and then set everything up and make sure everything works. Is that okay? So the other time we set up our database, the database was called university, and then we set up a table called employee in access. So we used access to set up our database. Our database was set up in access. After we set up our database in access, after we set up our database in Access, we went to create a table called employee. We went to view, we went to design view, and then we stated the various tables that, the various fields that should be in the table. We said that we want can you see my screen, by the way?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we said we wanted ID, first name, last name, and department. So those are the fields in which we created. And then we gave them the data types of auto number, short text, and short text. So these are all set up and then they have been created. Now I'm going to move into the Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio. I'm going to open it up and I'm going to set up a new project. I'm going to create a project. And then my project is going to have the name. Why is it taking such a long time? Good. So I'm going to set up a project. It's going to be a Windows Form project. And then here I'm going to give it the name university so that it just matches the database in which I am using. I think I have university already there. So let me call it university app. Okay. And then I'll have create. Over here, you can see that I'm not using the 6.0 anymore. I'm using 8.0 or 9, but I'll be using 8.0. And then I'll just click on create to create my project so I can start writing my code. So after I have set up my my database, the next thing in which I have to do is to set up my interface, how my application is going to look like, how is my application going to feel like. So now I'm going to look at my interface. How am I going to design the interface that I would use for the application? So in designing my interface, my canvas would load, everything would set up for me. Then I can begin designing my interface. Wonderful. So now that the canvas is set up, I'll look for my toolbox. Sometimes some students don't find their toolbox here. So whenever there is something you want to use you can't find, you can go to view, you can go in view and go and look for toolbox or tool list or output list or error list. Any of those items are here that you can look for and then utilize. So these things are here. So in here, I'll come to the toolbox. I would go for label. I would quickly design the design because we did this the other time. So I'll just quickly do the design. So in here, I want a label for first name. I'll go for the text property of it, and I'll change the text property to first name. Okay, right here. I'll go for it again, and then I'll put it at the top here, and I'll call this one employee system. Okay, and then I'll put it here. I'll go for this again, and then over here, instead of me having first name, I'm going to have last name. Okay, and then the next thing I'm going to do is for department. So this is going to be for department. Okay. And then the next thing which I'm going to do over here, I think I'm done with all the labels. So now I need text boxes. So I'm going to have a text box over here. I'm going to stretch out my text box a bit. I'm going to put it over here so it's in line with this. And then I want all my things should be in the middle a bit. Very nice. And so over here, I have a text box here. The length I think is okay. And my text box here is going to have a name property of txt underscore. Okay, let me just do it one word. So txt first name. Then I have this as my first name. I'll copy this so that I can just place it under here. Then I'll just change this to txt last name. And then over here, I'll change this one into txt department. Okay, then under here, I will have the button. Okay, so I have my button here. I would stretch it out a bit. And then I'll make it big a bit. Good. So my button is here. And then I'll click on the button and go for the text property of the button so that the text property of the button will be add. Then I'll just click and copy this and paste it. Then I'll paste it here. Then this button is going to be update. Then I'll just copy it again and put it over here so that this button here is going to be delete.
Hello, sir.
Yes, please.
Yes, please. I think you've left out the employee ID since the names here should go supposed to tally with those on access.
Perfect. Perfect question. The employee ID, we said that it is going to be automatically generated. That means that if you go and put a tab here for employee ID, over here, it means someone has to key in for the employee ID. So if I was building a system in which the employee ID must be keyed in, there is no need for me to bring employee ID. If I was building a system in which the employee ID is automatically generated in the background, then this here doesn't come here. Because the moment it comes here, it means that someone has to key it in, or there is intervention from someone. So me not bringing it here is not it's a choice, because I know that I don't need you to key in the employee ID. The employee ID will be handled in the background, because I already told the database that the employee ID should be automatically generated. Please, do we understand?
Yes,
Please, do we
sir.
understand? Great. Another thing in which you also said was that the form here is following um, the database. That is not true. You see, sometimes your database has fields in there which are sometimes combinations of other fields. Like whenever you are taking first name, last name, and other name, technically there is always a fourth table, which is full name. So whatever the person enters as their first name, last name, and other name, you combine them and put it in the table full name. So that if there is something you want to do that has a full name required, you just go there and pick it. So on your screen, you will not see anything there like full name, things like that. So it is not every day that everything in your database will come onto your phone. So I want to make that one clear. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. So in here, I'll just make this thing come down a bit. And then over here, I'm going to change this thing into a data grid view. So here is going to be a data grid view. And then over here, I'm going to extend it. And I'm going to raise it. And I'm going to extend it. And then I'm going to bring this aspect 2 down a bit so that it looks like this. So this is the viewpoint for my application. The data grid view, I'm going to make sure it has a name of data grid view 1, and I'm okay with that. I am perfectly fine with that. So I have designed what I want for my application. In the data grid view, I can see there is some button over here. I'm going to click on that button, and I'm going to untick all of these things, because I want to control the additions. I want to control the adding, the editing, and the deletion myself. I don't want the application to control any of these things. So I'm going to control them myself. That's very important for me. Also, I'm going to go into the properties panel. In the properties panel of the data grid, I'm going to look for a property called select mode. So it's in alphabetical order. So I can see select mode. And here in select mode, I'm not going to select by row header selection, but I'm rather going to select the full row selection, so that whenever I click on something, the entire row is what I am selecting. And then, more importantly, I'm going to set my read only to true, so that the read only for it is true. So with that, I have configured everything I need to configure with my table. Oh, I forgot about this one. So here I'll click on it. This is fine, but the font, I want to do some changes to the font. I want to make the font size, let's say 30. Perfect. And then I want to make the boldness true. Perfect. And then I want to center it a bit so that it gives my work some kind of nice looking ability, or it looks nice, or everything is in the correct format or something. It's very important for us to note that design is very important. The look of your work, how it is structured, how their proportions are. Something shouldn't be bigger than something. Sometimes you take work from you guys, and one of this will be like this, the other one will be like this, and this is like this. I don't want these things. Everything should be in line and correctly formatted. With that, I have finished designing my form. So I've finished with the interface. The next thing I have to do is write the code for the actions that the form will perform. So now I'm coming to look at the form itself. What kind of actions are the form going to perform? First thing, I will have to double click on the canvas. So I'll double click on this thing here. Anywhere on that place, I'll just double click. This button clicked and I'll remove it from there so that I have this as my page, right? Oh, let's go back. I think I've made a mistake here. So let's go back. Yes, let's go back. So let me click on this one. And here, the name property is still text box 1 because over here, I mistakenly clicked on this and changed it to txt. So let me change this back into form 1. Perfect. And then I'll click on this one and change it into txt first name. Perfect. So now when I double click this, it tells me form 1. Perfect. Oh, but the form for the form 1 is always in capital letters. So let me just go back here and change this form 1 to capital F, because it is a class. So that when I come back here, it says form 1, everything is perfect. And then I will double click on the screen, and then I have here form 1 load. This is what is going to come. Perfect, I'm here now. Now, in here, at the top of my public class, I'm going to import some properties that I would use. So I'm going to import system dot data dot only data db. So I have going to import this. And this is very important for me because it is this import that I would use to do the following: to connect my application to the database, number 1. So I need it for connecting my application to the database. I need it for taking data from my database. And I need it for sending commands to my database. So 1, 2, 3 are very important commands. The first command is me connecting to the database. The second command is when I need to bring data from my database. And the last command here is when I need to make a request to my database. That is what I use to make the request. So it is very important I know what these tools are, or have these tools available. And these tools can be found in import system.data.only. So now I have that one. I can now write my code for the OLEDB. I can now write my code to do what I need to do to perform the tasks in which I need to perform. So in here, I'm going to create the connection string to the database. So it's private because it only belongs to the class form, and it's going to have the name constring. This is just a variable I'm creating, and it is always going to be a string of data. Now, in this complex piece of code here, there is a constant in it. That is, over here, it is going to be provided by Microsoft.ac.oledb 12.0. And then I will have to specify the data source that my database can be found in. This piece of code here is constant. You change nothing there. It is the connection to the database in Access. Remember, we will do connection to various databases so that we will see how we connect with Access. We will see how we connect with MySQL. We'll see how we connect with the Microsoft SQL Server. But for now, with Access, this is how I'll connect to the database. I require this. And then the next thing in which I require is the location of the database in my computer. So when I go over here and click on File, and then after I click on File, I'll go and click on Save As, and then I would, yes, so I want to save it. I would go to my desktop, and then I already have the university over here. So let me not even bother myself, but let me call this university one just in case so that I know that this is the new one I'm dealing with. And then let's go back into my desktop. So I'm in my desktop now. And then I have university one over here. I can close the database. I don't need it anymore. So I can close it. So I have university one over here. I would right click and go to properties. And then in properties, I can see details. So this tells me the details in which I am in. I can see security. And then over here, I have the object name. I will copy the object name. This is what I'm looking for. Easy way to just copy the path. So you go to properties, go to security. I'll just copy this out. And once I copy this out, I'll come here and paste it after the equal to sign where source is. So this shows you that my database can be found in Drive C, in users, in the name of my computer, on my desktop, and this is the name of the database. So here I have gone to pick the database, and I've given the database in which I've picked to this one over here. The next thing in which I have to do is I have to create a connection of the database, because what I've just done is just the string showing where the database is located. Now I'm going to do the connection itself. So I'll tell the computer that the connection to my database as an object, so it's going to be a new OLEDB connection, and it is going to be put inside con string. Perfecto. So I have an error over here. I don't understand why I should have an error over there. So let's find out why I have an error over there. Okay. So I don't think it recognizes this one. It is not defined. Let's see. So what I'm doing is that I'm letting the computer go and find the OLEDB connection and install it itself through the internet. Save me some time. Sometimes when your connection is not being found, you would see that there would be a marker over there. You can just go there and tell the computer to install it for you. In my case, it has installed it, so you can see that it is active now. And this is also active now, so you can see that it knows where it should find the data. So everything is installed for you. So this is how I'll create a connection to the database. I'll first prepare my string, then I'll apply my string. Next thing I have to do is I have to create the OLE adapter. The OLE adapter is what I will use to bring in data from my database onto my application. So I'm going to say private adapter as an OLE DB adapter. And over here, I'm going to create a private data table. So you see that when your data is being taken from the database, it is a table. So when you bring it to the form here, you need a data structure, which is also a table, to put that data in it. So the data table would serve as the data structure that will put the data in. And it is also an object. So we will create an object called data table. And this object is where our data is going to come from. So in here, we have created all the things I would need to connect to the database. Now, on thinking of this, when I launch my application, so I've launched the application now, right? And then the application launches, there are no errors, everything is fine, and the application opens up in my computer. Once it does that, I want the data that is inside the database to appear over here. So once this application launches, I want the data in the database to appear in the gray section I have over here. So I'm going to tell the computer that when the application loads, please go to the database and pick the data that is there. How do I tell the computer to do that? Now, the data being loaded for the database is something I will do repeatedly. When I add a new user, I'll have to update the table. When I go and delete a user, I'll have to update the table. When I go and update someone's information, I'll have to update the table. So I will create a sub for that so that I can always call the sub only once and I don't have to repeatedly call the sub. It repeatedly rewrites the code. But once I write it to the sub, I can only call the sub and then utilize that. Very importantly to note also is that a sub and a function in our terms perform the same rules. The only difference is in Visual Studio or in VS Code, sorry, in Visual Studio Code or what we are doing, oh, sorry, in Visual Basic, I get so confused with the name of this. In Visual Basic, as we are doing, it's very important for us to note that a sub and a function are similar in that a sub is a function that does not return data, whereby a function will always return data. So if we were doing this in our normal programming, that is our Java or our C++ or our C, in which we learned previously, it means that it's not, you just say void something something, but with Visual Basic, there's nothing like void. It's rather you use a sub. So a sub caters a function that does not have any return type. So in here, I'm just going to tell the computer that I'm creating a sub. So private sub, and it is going to load data. So that is the name of it, load data. Now in my sub, I'm going to use try and catch so that if there is any error, my application will not fail. My application will not hang. My application will continue to run even if there is any failure with the sub that is being performed. First thing, I need to open the connection to the database. Luckily, I created a variable called connection, and I did that. Now, in that variable, I'm just going to say connection.open so that it means that I have opened the connection to the database. In here, I'm going to write the following code. Dim query as a string is equal to, into double quotes, select all from the employee table. So I have just selected all information from the employee table. Remember, in our access database we created, so over here in our access, in there, enable content, we have a table called employee. So I am invoking or calling upon this table called employee. Now, over here, I type the word employee in capital letters. So to cause a failure, so I have to type it the way it is there, which is capital E, and then the rest are all in small letters. So this is the query I want to send to my database. Now I must send it to the database. And very importantly, we said that if we have to send data to the database or bring data from our database, we'll use the OLEDB adapter. So in here, I'll just say adapter is equal to new OLE adapter. And in here, it takes two things. First of all, it takes the query. And second of all, it takes the connection to the database. So I've taken two things. So now I have gone to the database and then I have made a request. Now I need to take the request I have made. So I'll tell the computer that if there is something in the data table, please go and clear it. Once it is cleared, so what I was saying was that take what is inside the data adapter, clear it, what is in the table, take what is in the data adapter. So this query will go into the database, take information and come and give it here. So take what is here and fill it into the data table. Perfect. And after you have done that, go and take the data grid viewing, which we did. Remember, we call the data grid view, this one here, we gave it a name property of data grid view 1. So in here, if I say data grid view 1, I'm talking about that data table. And then go and then take the source data for it. So data source. And then make that data source equal to whatever that is inside our data table. When you are done, close the connection. So connection dot what? Close. So this is how I will go and pick all the data from the database onto my form. Once I've done that, in here, in the catch section, I'm going to say message box into bracket dot show into brackets. Now in here, I'm going to say error loading data. And whatever error that it got loading the data, I'm going to join it to the exception error it picked. Good. And then I'm going to close the connection. Perfect. So over here, when there is an error, it is caught here and given to this. And when this is given to this, in this, there is a messaging section. So I want you to display error loading data and display why there is an error, in which the computer will pick by itself. So now, if I load the information in my form, I expect that if there is any data in my database, it should show inside my form over here. In this case, nothing showed here. Why did nothing show over there? Why is nothing showing over there? Why don't I have any code over there? I don't have any code over there because I wrote the code for the SAP, but I did not tell the computer to implement the SAP by calling upon it. So when you are loading the form data, remember, if I double tap this place here, it takes me to form load. So when you are loading the form, load the form by going to pick the data from the database through load data. So now, if I start my application again, it will call upon the load form. And we can see that here I have number 1, Karen, number 2, McCarthy, number 3, Louise. And they are all the data here is being picked and being showcased. So I'm showcasing the data in there. Perfect. So now I can load data into my viewing area. Next thing I have to do is I have to be able to add someone into my application. How will I add someone into my application? For you to add someone, you would have to fill the first name, fill the last name, fill the department, then click on the add button. So I'll double tap the add button for that event. Then I'll now write the code in there for what would happen when a user is going to be added into the database. So in here, I'm going to write try and catch again. I'm going to open a connection to my database. And then in here, I'm going to write the queries that would run inside my database. What queries are going to run inside my database? The queries are as follows. Insert into the employee table. Now, here is very important. The field names must match. So remember, we said first name, last name, department. The way they are typed here must be typed the same way. There should be no errors in any typing. So first name, comma, last name, comma, and department. Perfect. The values. Now, here's where I put in the values in which I want to put in from the form. So in here, I'm going to say at, so this is a reference, first name, comma, at, last name, comma, at, department, close bracket. So now I'm telling the computer, go into my database called employee. Where you see this, put this there. Where you see that, put this there. And where you see that, put this there. But these things here are placeholders. So now I'm going to put the correct placeholders over there. And here's where the command comes in. So I'm going to say dim command as a new OLEDB command. And then in here, I'm going to say the query. So the question I want to ask. And then after I ask the specific question I want to ask, the next thing in which I have to do is put in the connection to the database. But remember, these are placeholders. So the command helps me to put those placeholder informations over there. So over here, I would say command dot parameter dot add with value into brackets. Then in here, I'll put in at first name, the way I typed it over here. And over here, the first name, we are going to pick it from txt first name. Perfect. But not just txt first name, we are picking it from the text value of txt first name. Perfect. Over here, I'll copy this again. Now, note that before I get here, I have to, first of all, make sure your user has typed the first name, typed the last name, made all of those checks before we get here. So here, I'm assuming that everybody is good. They will type first name, they will type correct things there, and then they will use. So keep that in mind so that later on, we would make those checks before we even get here. Now, in here, this would be last name. Yes, but I can see this is underlined. That means let me come back here, click on this one. And here, what did I type for it? I typed txt But here I type text. So it's supposed to be TXT last name. So that here it will be correct now. Good. Then here it is TXT department. Perfect. So whatever you type in over here would be taken by this one and given to this, and it will be placed over here. The same way for all of them. Now, once this is done, then we can say the command we are requesting, please go and execute it inside the database. Now, once it has been executed, I can then go on and take my connection and close it. Now, I want to do the following. Load the form again. So I'll load the information in the form again. Number two, I want to clear all the fields in which I have. So clear fields. And then I want to run a message box that tells the user that record added successfully. Now, another important thing to note in this is that clear fields here is not a method that comes from, let me see. It's not a function that or a sub that comes from Visual Basic. So it is created by me, me being the designer or the developer. So it means I need to create a sub to do that. So in here, I'm going to create another sub. So private sub. I'm going to call my sub clear fields. And then in here, I'm going to say the following, that wherever you have txt first name dot text, make it equal to nothing. Wherever you have txt last name dot text, make it equal to nothing. And wherever you have txt department dot text, make it equal to nothing. So here I've used this to empty my fields. So let's have an example. If I run my application now, over here, first name is Chris. Other name is this. And then here the department it belongs to is quality. So here we just add, and you can see that the information here is added. I can see Chris here. We can see that the information here and here have been cleared because of the clear fields. And then the pop-up message comes that tells me that I've added someone successfully. So that is how I would add someone into my application. Are there any questions so far?
So from the design view, I saw when you use a command parameter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, from the command parameter, where you wrote the first name, but still, yes, from here.
Mm-hmm.
That's from the line that's
Mm-hmm.
iterated. First name, but still for the others. Why is it so?
Oh, I'm sorry. Over here it's supposed to be last name. And then over here it's supposed to be department. Yes. Perfect. Thank you very much. There's an error. So that first name will go with first name here. This will go with at last name here, and this will go with department. Thank you for the correction. Okay, so we have done addition of a name. Let's see if we can do updating of someone. Let's see if we can update someone's information. So in here, we'll go to our design again. We'll double tap on the update button, and then we'll go on to write the code to help someone update. So if the data grid view dot select, remember we told the computer that we want to select the rows, dot count is greater than 0, then we are going to do try, and then we are going to open a connection to a database and do all of these things in which we are going to do. But to save me some time, I'm going to copy all of these things here. So connection, clear fields, the message box, I'm going to copy all of them. And then I'm going to bring all of them over here in the try. Because over here, the information I'll do will change. So here, I would rather have updates, employees, set the first name to be equal to at first name, comma, the last name should be equal to at last name, comma. Then department should be equal to at department. Perfect. Perfect. Now, in here, it is going to be the same things here. But over here, we need to add which ID in which these changes should be effected. Because if we leave the code like this, it will change all the employee information to the same thing, which is not what we want. So over here, we want to say where the ID is equal to at ID. Perfect. That means that over here, we need to add a command parameter for ID. But remember, our form doesn't have any parameter for ID. There is nothing, there's no parameter for ID. But in the data grid view, there is a parameter for ID. So I'll tell the computer that when you go to the data grid view, go and look for the selected row and what is inside the first element of the selected row, which is element 0. And then when you find the first element of the selected row, pick the information from the cells that is called ID. And then when you select that, pick the value of what you have found. And then we close the bracket here. So amazingly, what we have done is that over here we have a field called ID. Whenever we launch the application, we have launched the application, we can see that when the application pops up over here, and the application has popped up, we have a row called ID. So you can see that I am selecting them now. You can see the selections. Perfect. So whenever I select something, it means that I have selected the entire row. This is 0, 1, 2, 3. So I'm telling the computer that go and select row 0. But you see that row 0 goes with a particular column. So the column is ID. So technically, when I run it again, I'm telling the computer that go for this row, item in 0 here, but in the column 2, item in 0. And then I'll pick the item there. Then over here, I'm picking the value of the item in which I want. So the information there is what I'm picking. So it will pick the IDs for us. And to use the IDs to update the information. Everything else remains the same. You to run the query, close it, make it. But here, instead of me saying record added successfully, I'll say record updated successfully. So let's see if I can update something. Oh, sorry. Before I go and see if I can update something, I have not finished my try and catch. So if my try and catch, I'm going to display the errors again. So over here, I got errors here. So here I forgot to put my error in here. So here, error adding data, that's all. And then over here, I would say error updating data. So that's it. And then here we said if the person has selected something, then this should happen. But if the person has not selected anything, so else, we should give a message box. And our message box should say, please select a record to update. Perfect. So now let's run this again. If someone comes in here and tries to update something, tells him error, no data found, no parameters found, perfect. You see that? Now, if I select the first one here, in here, I've selected the first one. I want to change the first name is Karen, that is fine. And then the last name is Ajiman, in which we just shorten it out. So here I'll just say Ajiman like this. And then the department is still going to be complaint. Perfect. So when I click on update, no parameter given for one or more of the required parameters. Okay, I'm still having an error over here. Let's see what is going on. Let's see. What did I forget? So did I make a mistake with the query or over here? Over here is fine. There is no error in terms of what I am doing. So what is the problem? Let's see. Connection, that. Everything is fine here. OnlyDB connection, that. First name, that. ID, that. Okay, let me run it again. Okay, so I'll select this one. I'll change the name. I'll change, let's say, let me call her Frimpong. And then the department is, let's say, IT, just to make things easier for me. So update. Okay, the access edges cannot find, okay. So here it's supposed to be employee, not employees. Let me update it. And again, you see why the try and catch is important, so that if there is any error, it will tell you. It wouldn't crash your entire application. So here I have Karen again. I'm going to update to frame Paul. And then over here, the department is going to be IT. So update and perfect. I can update now. So okay. So I have no problem. So you can see that here is Karen Frimpong and then what? IT. So I've been able to update. Secondly, lastly, the next study which we have to do is we have to know how to delete somebody, remove somebody from the system. How will I delete someone from the system? How do I delete? So I'll go to the form, I'll double click. Oh, before I go to the delete, any questions with the update? Okay, no questions with the update. So with the delete, luckily all the code here is very similar to the update because uh, I have to go and grab the item. So I've grabbed the item and then I have to check all of these things here. But before then, once I've grabbed the item, let me just hold on for a second. Once I've grabbed the item, I need to ask the user if he truly wants to delete. So I'll say if um, message box dot show into brackets, are you sure you want to delete the record? Now over here, I'll bring a comma and then I'll bring the title of the message box, which is going to be um, delete, confirm, delete. And then I'll bring a comma here. Then it is going to be a message box of button type yes and no. And then it is also going to have yes and no. Uh-huh. And yeah, so this is the message box. And it is going to be equal to um, dialog box, dialog results, dot yes. Perfect. So now, over here, a message box will be shown on the screen. If the person sees the message box, you have to say yes and no. If it says yes, then we'll come in here and then we'll do all of this thing here. Great. Now, in doing all of this thing here, I'm coming. What's going on? Why am I having an error over here? So if, okay, I think there's one more end if, which would be at the bottom here. So here, and then I'll have this. So again, I'll have to connect to my database. And in here, rather than say update, I'll just tell the computer delete from employee where ID is equal to that. And over here, I'll just delete all of this ID information from there. Okay. And then everything else would be the same. So here, I would rather tell the person delete was successful. Here, if there was an error, I'll tell him that there was an error whilst deleting the data. And then, yeah, that's fine. Now, the same thing in which we did here, where we would have an else, so that if the person, so please select a record to delete. Perfect. Perfect. So once I run my application, I can just select someone and delete him, and the person is gone. So I have just created add, update, delete, and then select, in which you can show all the information from the application. As I told those who were here earlier, I have put in your group your assignment for your assignment one. Please make sure you do it before the expiring date comes next week. I would also drop this video in, and I will drop a step-by-step code and what you have to do so that you can look at it and read it whilst you are watching the video to help you write the code also. Are there any questions, please? Then if there are no questions, pardon?
When you said the assignment is supposed to be submitted?
1 week from today.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for coming. We'll meet again next week. Oh, wait. Please wait. I'm supposed to give the school some attendance thing, so let me just do that. Okay. Thank you so much. We'll meet again next week.